So that picture of the cat is to do with this one. This headline in the How to Spend It. Now this is a grotesque example of cruelty to animals and cats. It's an exploitation. I mean, that phrase, "What's new, pussycat?" is completely grotesque. It is nothing to do with the pussycat, nothing to do with its welfare, nothing to do with the cat's welfare. It's as an accessory, and it is exhibited as an accessory on the cover of this stupidly called magazine, How to Spend It. And it's an exhibition of the kind of bourgeois male fashion model or models. And it has nothing to do with welfare of the animals, and it has nothing to do with at all the financial impact or implications of animal welfare or the status of animals in society. It's completely objective, objectifying the cat. And there is no reference whatsoever in the Financial Times of society being kept in various modes of cruelty and irresponsibility and lack of care and lack of compassion. And most certainly there is no mention of the possibility even that having a kind of picture like that at the foot of the kind of gay male, gay, I use the word gay in the widest possible sense, including the possibility that that word would refer to the life and the style and the location beyond sex and sexual orientation. Now that is only possible if the person has the security and the safety of a home. Then they can have a cat or cats. There is no mention, only mention, and you have to wade through pages and pages before you come across page 52 the first time, and this it's an ambivalent kind of face. Is it a male or is it a female with the glasses holding this cat? So as I said, it's a kind of indulgence, in a trendy indulgence in a gayness without committing to any principles or morality or ethics. Now that is the cat that this person, so-called model, is holding. And it's a likeness, let's say, of this one. It may not be the same cat. It's a likeness of this cat. And there is nothing in the item starts, the beginning, the item starts, it's called beauty, the great beauty. The traditional codes of menswear get a playful twist this season. The twist is quite literally twisting the truth. about society. So all is kind of completely vulgar. Vulgarity, it seems, has always been part of fashion. And this is true of the some of the pictures inside of the model or the models, the main models, yeah. And the cruelty to animals that takes place every day across Britain, across Japan, which is where the owners of the Financial Times come from, Nikkei. They bought the Financial Times around 2015, I think, when it was finalized. And according to the current entry on the Financial Times or the FT, the Wikipedia entry, it says 131 years. It has been in existence from 1881. How that 1888, so 131 years. And this person, who is now in the post of the editor of the Financial Times, is a person who was born in Lebanon, in Beirut, and she's described as having attended the Columbia University and worked for Forbes and so on. And she joined the Financial Times more than 20 years ago, let's say. So she's Lebanese, and the FT is owned by the Japanese. But it seems that the FT has not got any real attitude, change in its attitude to our society. What I want to say is that if it is called Financial Times or FT, after 131 years, not only should it change from being man edited or male edited, but even if it is female edited, which is the current position since January this year, it has to change its definition of journalism. If it is called Financial Times, or if it is to be allowed to be called Financial Times, then it has to give the financial information about society, about people, which it hasn't done. And this grotesque exploitation of the cat and the whole, the title is completely offensive. How to spend it. That presumes that people who buy this have got it. Of course, the people who buy it have got it. £4, even now in this 2020, on the 7th of November 2020, £4, which is the price of the Financial Times, is enough, just about enough, for a person's meal, one meal. Unless, of course, the loans of the Daily Mail and the Sun, who run features from time to time about a single mother collecting vouchers and managing to buy a magical kind of full week's supply by shopping around and exchanging vouchers for food. Now, that is a stupidity of the extreme kind, because for a start, there are not enough vouchers in circulation in society to meet the needs of even 10 people, let alone millions of people who are in poverty. And secondly, to buy the amount of food that these liars say people can buy, or some of the kind of magician single moms manage to buy, it would take months. So that is how stupid these things. And the Financial Times is politically a free market, free world kind of free trade paper according to the entry which we have just checked, entry on the Wikipedia. It doesn't supply, it doesn't really serve the information needs about financial times. It doesn't have any information. So, although it is kind of published as a separate type and separate kind of color from the rest of Fleet Street, it is essentially as contemptuous of the reading public as the rest of Fleet Street. Because by contempt, I mean the assumption that the people reading the papers would be swayed by the contents and not question the integrity and the rigorous nature of the contents they're reading, which is only possible if the people are gullibles and have been brainwashed over decades. Which is why I call these people, majority of the people, gullibles. The gullibles are the people that put Trump into the White House in the first place. And the gullibles from across the North who allowed Boris Johnson to lie and to give him that kind of absolutely unacceptable and unsustainable majority, about 80 seats majority. And what is happening with the media, what is happening with the diagnosis of the media is that, as I said, Saturday's edition, the weekend editions, contain extra supplements. Various magazines, including this one, of course, the Financial Times, the How to Spend It. And then they've got the FT Weekend magazine itself on top of that one, which, as I said, is running a kind of cover story about Thailand. Now, Thailand is a destination, obviously, for many of the British and the Western European consumers of the open market for sex that Thailand has represented to them for a very long time. So this story about the Thai revolution, the Thai youth revolution, saying that inside Thailand's youth revolution, the Thai monarchy was all powerful. Then came the student protests. John Reed reports. Now, the headline here in the main piece is Thailand belongs to the people, not the king. Now, Thailand is not the only country. In the Southeast, that is the Far East. And in Southeast Asia, which is Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, or Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, and India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, whatever order you put that in, that part was Macaulay's kind of territory. And the papers there, the ones that are published in English in the subcontinent, Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, the papers, the magazines, the media that are still published and posted and circulated and that trade in the English language have not been liberated from empire mentality and colonized mentality. So in a perverse way, the printed press in English in the subcontinent is actually a kind of vindicating Macaulay. On the outside, these people are Indians, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis. But on the inside, they are still mentally enslaved to worship the image of the colonialist white person who, to them, these mentally brainwashed mental slaves, represents a superior mentality, superior intellect. And that is what brainwashing does, and that is what Macaulay must have been thinking he would be doing. And in a perverse way, as I said, he has succeeded. As I said, in Bangladesh, well, when it was East Pakistan in the 1960s, a tale was told to me about a rickshaw puller in Dhaka by a fellow student of mine, and who told me a story that actually resonated with my experience as well. He said that one rickshaw puller had carried so many English-speaking passengers in his time that he picked up a lot of sentences, English language sentences, without any regard to whether he understood the meanings or not. But phonetically, in sound, in vocal terms, he memorized some of the sentences. And it was something that he then turned into a kind of weapon to use on the other customers who are not English speaking. So when he had a customer who he assumed didn't understand the English language, he would then suddenly burst into speaking those sentences that he had memorized. Now, whatever the subject of the conversation with this non-English speaking or non-English or non-European passenger, this rickshawala is the word, but rickshaw puller is the actual meaning, would use his ability to recall these sentences as a kind of lever to use against this particular kind of passenger. Meaning, in the bargain, if he needed to convince the non-English speaking or non-English or non-European passenger of the rickshaw puller's kind of legitimacy and the justification for charging whatever he was charging them, then he found from his experience that delivering recollected sentences of absolutely relevant conversation acted as a defining kind of pressure on the other person, who would then more often than not cave in and agree to his extra charge. What does it mean? It means that the English language remains, or at least it remained after the 1960s when I heard this from my colleague. And from all accounts, today, 2020, English remains the language of assumed superiority of intellect and of social status in all these three countries, main countries: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. So that's what is happening. This is not liberation. This is not independence. This is not freedom. It is subjugation dressed up as independence because the colonialists have gone physically. But the colonialist narrative, the cultural impact, and the cultural kind of levers are still there very much. If you look at the kind of films that are made in India's kind of capital of filmmaking, Bollywood, English, when it is kind of inserted in the conversation, in the dialogue, is inserted exactly as a lever exercising power. That is what is happening. And it's not just the language, it's the content, it's the agenda. And the demonstration effect, the imitation, is absolutely as vital and as alive today, more than 70 years, 73 years since 1947, as it was there in the 73 years ago. And despite the fact that it was the departure, the freedom from the British colonialists, the word that is used more often than not is the word partition. It's not independence. So who imposed that word partition on the people of the subcontinent? It's not independence. It's not freedom. It's not against colonialists. And there is still debate about the real purpose for Tagore's Bande Mataram. Jaya 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 He Bharata Bhagya Vidhata. It is said that he wrote that for the colonialist, imperialist queen. It's a victory, Victoria, joy, Joyo He. And although the so-called patriotic Indians don't accept that, the contents of that song, which is the national anthem for India, the contents give the game away. The Tagore actually wrote that as a kind of salute to the Queen, the Victoria. Joy is victory. So Joyo 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 He Bharata Bhagya Vidhata. Bhagya Vidhata is the owner of the fate of India. At the turn of the century, not this century, a century ago, that was what was happening. No idea. Tagore had no idea that there would be an independent so-called India after 47, because it was too early. Decades before that happened, he wrote that. Joyo, 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 Hey. And it's a kind of singing in praise of the victorious one, the Victoria. So the Indian academics have done a lot to argue that that was not the reason what prompted Tagore to write that. But others have said, and others have done the linguistic textual analysis of the Vande Mataram, and the contents give the game away as a tribute to Queen Victoria. And it has been argued, although Tagore has the richest kind of contribution to literature in the Bengali language, and as we have been observing, his lyrics are among the most frequently played ones in the Bengali language across India. And new generation of singers and artists are kind of performing his lyrics. Many of them are dedicational, devotional, and many of them are kind of otherwise secular. And Tagore never expressly argued against the British Empire in the way that Nazrul Islam, the rebel poet, did. And the fact that the two different kind of attitudes and outlooks is proven in the fact that Tagore was not arrested, nor tried, nor prosecuted, nor imprisoned. But Nazrul was. And there is still a lot of room about the decision by the Nobel Committee to award Tagore the 2019-13 Nobel Prize for Literature for his work Gitanjali. It is argued that it was connected with the perception that he was very loyal to the British Empire or imperialists. And as is known, the Nobel Prize, far from being objective, it is very much a political kind of award. As they said, I mean, when Obama was elected president, they gave him the prize literally within weeks of his election. There was no way that he had earned anything like what they suggested he had in that time. And to give Henry Kissinger the Nobel Prize for Peace is absolutely absurd. So